History is shaped by moments, thin, fragile instants where a single choice, a single hesitation, a single stroke of luck changes everything. In May 1536, Anne Boleyn stood in the Tower of London awaiting death, her enemies certain, her fate sealed. But what if that day had ended differently? What if the Queen who redefined England had not been executed, but survived? To understand the magnitude of that question, you must first feel the world she lived in. Henry VIII's court, ruthless, brilliant, treacherous, and had suffered a devastating miscarriage, her enemies circling, her marriage collapsing, and the machinery of her destruction already in motion. Her fall seemed inevitable, but alternate history asks us to imagine the impossible. What if she escaped the sword? What if power shifted instead of ending? In this story, we step into that divergence, the moment survival reshapes politics, alliances, and England itself. The early months of 1536 were a time of suffocating tension inside Henry VIII's court. The air itself seemed to vibrate with fear as rival factions watched Anne Boleyn's every move, waiting for the moment her fragile hold on power might finally break. Before her hypothetical survival, the court was divided sharply into two camps. On one side stood the Boleyn supporters, ambitious men and women who had risen through her influence and desperately needed her to stay queen. On the other side lurked the conservative nobility, the old families who despised her reformist leanings, her sharp tongue, and her challenge to traditional power structures. To them, Anne was not the future, she was the threat. At the center of this storm was Thomas Cromwell, Henry VIII's most trusted minister. The two had once worked closely, but their alliance had frayed. Anne's recent miscarriage, rumored to be a male child, had given Cromwell both motive and opportunity. If Anne fell, Cromwell could consolidate his religious and political reforms without her interference. If she lived, she remained the only woman capable of turning Henry against him. The stakes could not have been higher. But now the alternate history unfolds, and does not die. In this version of events, Henry VIII does not sever the thread of her life. Instead, he wavers. When he visits her chambers, his expression is a complicated mask, part grief, part anger, part something harder to define. The loss of a potential male heir still gnaws at him, but the reality of her death sentence suddenly feels heavier. And pale and trembling, senses the shift. Her survival is not mercy, it is uncertainty. The court reacts instantly. Whispers return to the corridors. Her supporters breathe again, but cautiously. The conservative faction stiffens, knowing that her escape from execution means she might yet regain influence. Cromwell is the most unsettled of all. His carefully laid plans depend on Anne's removal, and now the queen he sought to destroy is alive and watching. And so the political landscape realigns. Anne's survival does not restore her crown's stability, but it alters the balance. Her presence alone becomes a reminder that power in Tudor England is never secure, never promised, and never without consequence. One birth could turn a doomed queen into the most powerful woman in England. In the real timeline, the tragedy of Anne Boleyn's miscarriage in 1536 shattered her last hope of security. But here the story bends. The pregnancy holds. The danger passes. And one storm-bitten autumn night, Greenwich Palace trembles, not with fear, but with the sharp, urgent cry of a newborn prince. A boy. Helvet. But living. Henry. At once, the court seems to inhale, as if the entire kingdom had been holding its breath for years. Servants rush through the corridors with trembling excitement. Nobles gather in clusters, whispering furiously about shifting fortunes. Those who doubted and who predicted her downfall begin quietly recalculating their loyalties. The conservatives feel power slipping through their fingers. The Boleyn faction, long bruised and cornered, rises with a triumphant, almost electric confidence. For Anne, the transformation is almost indescribable. Only weeks earlier, she was fragile, exhausted, and politically exposed, one misstep away from ruin. Now she holds England's future in her arms. Every breath her son takes lifts her higher above her enemies. The queen who once walked on trembling ground suddenly feels the stone beneath her feet solidify. Her smile sharpens. Her posture straightens. She has delivered what Henry VIII wanted most, and in doing so, she becomes nearly untouchable. Henry VIII himself is overcome, relief, pride, and an almost boyish joy blending into a fierce possessive love. His legacy, once uncertain, is secured. A living male heir means he can no longer entertain the idea of replacing and without risking his own political foundation. Their marriage, though still turbulent, is now reinforced by the unshakable bond of dynastic survival. For the first time in a long time, Henry looks at Anne not as a liability, but as the mother of his kingdom's future. But there is one man who feels the tremor of doom beneath this joy: Thomas Cromwell. In real history, he would orchestrate Anne's downfall with precision. In this world, her triumph dismantles the entire structure he built. A Boleyn prince means the Boleyn family rises again, gaining land, influence, and access to the king that Cromwell cannot intercept. Policies he once shaped freely now face scrutiny from a queen whose power he had underestimated. For the first time, the minister who once controlled the court from the shadows senses the shadows shrinking. And beyond the palace walls, the entire nation feels the shift. Foreign ambassadors scramble to reassess alliances. Religious reformers gain confidence, believing God has blessed the new order. Every faction, every bishop, every noble learns the same lesson that night. And Boleyn's survival was not the end of a crisis. It is the beginning of a new, uncertain, and profoundly different England. With a prince in her arms, Anne steps into a future where her influence will reach farther than history ever allowed. The political landscape bends around her, reshaping itself in ways none could have predicted. The woman who was meant to fall has instead become the keystone of the Tudor dynasty, and the consequences of that will echo through every chamber of the court. With a secure throne and a powerful queen mother, England's religious revolution could have been unstoppable. And Boleyn had always been more than a queen. She was a symbol, dangerous to some, inspiring to others. With a living male heir in her arms, she becomes something rarer, untouchable. And once she is untouchable, the pace of England's religious transformation shifts from a cautious crawl to a determined sprint. Historically, Henry VIII wavered between reform and tradition, balancing political necessity with personal belief. But now Anne's influence, strengthened by her triumph, amplifies the voices of the reformists. Thomas Cranmer, who once advanced Protestant ideas carefully and quietly, gains a partner whose power is no longer in question. Together, they begin to push reforms with a speed that startles even those who hoped for change. Catholic relics, bones of saints, fragments of the true cross, jars of sacred dust, begin to disappear from parish churches. Their removal, once controversial, now carries the full authority of both the crown and the queen. Sermons denounce superstition more boldly. Priests trained in the old rites find themselves quietly replaced by younger clergymen educated in the new theology favored by Anne's circle. And the English Bible, once a radical dream, spreads quickly. Under Anne's protection, Cranmer accelerates the process of placing an English translation in every parish church. For the first time, common laborers and noblewomen alike hear scripture spoken in the language of their everyday lives. The shift is seismic. Villagers who once relied solely on priests now read, or listen to others read, words that shape their understanding of God, kingship, and authority. Meanwhile, the dissolution of the monasteries takes on a sharply different character. Cromwell, whose influence is weakened but not eradicated, watches as the wealth once destined for the king's coffers is redirected. At Anne's urging, a portion of this immense fortune flows into Protestant universities, libraries, and schools. New institutions rise, centers of learning designed to cultivate scholars loyal not to Rome but to the new English Church. Instead of enriching royal favorites alone, the redistribution seeds a generation of Protestant thinkers who will define England for centuries. By the time the boy prince begins to walk, England is already shifting at its foundations. The old Catholic world feels distant, almost forgotten. With Anne's survival and her increased authority, what was once gradual becomes inevitable. England, decades ahead of schedule, transforms into a nation shaped by Protestant ideals, a kingdom whose identity is no longer divided but remade. And these religious convulsions ripple outward, changing not just belief, but the culture, the families, and the everyday rhythm of life in Tudor England. The daughter who would have ruled a golden age never ascends the throne. In this alternate world, Elizabeth Tudor's life begins the same way, but it unfolds in a completely different shape. She is still brilliant, still sharp, still gifted with a mind that sees patterns where others see chaos. But instead of growing up motherless, threatened, banished, and repeatedly declared illegitimate, she grows up cherished. Anne Boleyn's survival reshapes Elizabeth's childhood at the most fundamental level. Rather than being raised in distant households under a cloud of suspicion, she grows up within the warm center of the Tudor court. She sits at her mother's knee, laughs with her nurses, and learns languages from tutors chosen by a queen who values intellect above flattery. Her emotional world is not forged in fear, but in security. The harsh edges that define the historical Elizabeth, the careful masking of emotion, the razor-sharp caution, the near-unbreakable political instincts, never fully form. This Elizabeth is not forced to survive a childhood as a political orphan. She does not learn to weaponize solitude. She does not become the woman who could outmaneuver every suitor, every ambassador, every threat. Instead, she becomes something gentler, a diplomatic princess, polished, cultured, admired for her eloquence and grace. Still intelligent, perhaps even more educated under Anne's patronage, but with none of the trauma that taught her to outthink an entire court. Yet she remains overshadowed by her younger brother, Henry IX, the golden heir whose birth secured the dynasty. Elizabeth's role becomes traditional, a marriage treaty waiting to happen. Foreign courts eye her as a prize, not a threat. She may marry a French prince, a German elector, or a Spanish noble, alliances that could soften or reshape England's continental relationships depending on Anne's preferences. But the price of her happiness is England's cultural destiny. Without Elizabeth on the throne, there is no Elizabethan Golden Age, no flourishing of Shakespeare's theatre under royal protection, no naval triumph under her steady leadership, no uniquely English confidence born from a queen who defied expected womanhood. Instead, England becomes a Protestant monarchy shaped by the policies of her brother, not the brilliance of her reign. The tone of the future shifts. The cultural explosion we associate with Elizabeth never happens, or happens differently under different patrons and different pressures. And as the Tudor family stabilizes under Anne's survival, the personal harmony within the dynasty quietly rewrites the geopolitical landscape that once defined an era. A single life preserved can ripple across continents. Anne Boleyn's survival doesn't just reshape the Tudor household, it alters the entire map of Europe. With the birth of Prince Henry, the future Henry IX, England gains something priceless: a stable, unquestioned Protestant line of succession. No more frantic searches for heirs. No more political earthquakes driven by Henry VIII's desperation for a son. The Tudor dynasty stands firm, and stability radiates outward like a shockwave. At home, that stability reshapes England's place in Europe. Without the disastrous swings of legitimacy and religious uncertainty that followed Anne's execution, England becomes a predictable, if aggressively Protestant, player on the geopolitical stage. Protestant nations such as some German principalities and Scandinavian kingdoms perceive England not as a wavering ally but as a cornerstone of a new religious bloc. Diplomatic marriages strengthen these ties, further embedding England in a rising Protestant network. France, historically both rival and occasional partner, finds itself facing a steadier and more unified England. The traditional tension remains, but the volatility does not. Without the oscillations caused by later Tudor conflicts, England avoids costly, destabilizing wars that historically drained the treasury and reshaped national identity. Instead, diplomacy becomes the primary battlefield, marriages, treaties, and influence replacing swords. Spain, however, remains the great Catholic rival. Anne's presence ensures Henry VIII never reconciles with Rome, and Henry IX grows up in a court defined by Protestant ideals. As a result, Anglo-Spanish relations freeze into a long, cold hostility. Yet without Mary I's marriage to Philip or Elizabeth I's iconography as the Protestant savior, this rivalry stays political, not intensely personal. There is no armada driven by religious vengeance, no grand clash of Protestant England versus Catholic Spain. The rivalry burns, but it does not explode. Domestically, stability has unusual consequences. The social upheavals that historically produced a rising gentry class, the turbulence of rapid religious reforms, failed harvests, and war, are softened. Economic transformation slows. Monastery lands are still absorbed into new estates, but without the chaos of shifting reigns, the wealth consolidates among predictable power blocks. England grows more slowly, more predictably, less explosively than in our timeline. The price of stability is cultural stagnation. No Elizabethan Golden Age fueled by political daring and artistic freedom. No seismic naval victories driven by necessity. Instead, England's future becomes disciplined, orderly, less romantic, and less revolutionary. In a world where Anne Boleyn lives, England becomes steadier, calmer, more aligned with Protestant Europe, but the fiery catalyst that historically reshaped art, identity, and empire never ignites. Without crisis, the drama that forged England's identity never unfolds. The cultural heartbeat of England changes entirely when Anne Boleyn survives and produces a male heir. Crisis is the crucible of creativity, and without the political instability, religious turmoil, and existential threats that defined later Tudor England, the nation simply does not develop the same fiery cultural identity. No Elizabeth I means no golden age. The arts still grow, but differently. Shakespeare may still exist, but his environment, the combustible mix of national pride, exploration, espionage, and fear, simply vanishes. Instead of plays soaked in political allegory, religious tension, and reflections on unstable monarchy, he might become a court playwright producing flatter, safer stories for a more controlled, stable court. Without the shadow of the Armada or the uncertainty of succession, the themes of ambition, downfall, tyranny, and destiny lose their urgency. English literature becomes polished but less profound. National identity shifts too. Historically, the English saw themselves as the brave Protestant nation standing against Catholic superpowers. That narrative fuels centuries of ideology, from Shakespeare's histories to the propaganda of empire. But with Anne's survival, Protestantism becomes commonplace and unthreatened. No heroic self-image of England standing alone. Identity forms around prosperity, order, and predictability rather than resistance and triumph. Colonization follows a new path as well. With a stable monarchy and fewer military crises to force naval innovation, England is slower to expand outward. The early struggles in North America, Roanoke, Jamestown, and later the foundations of the 13 colonies, are delayed or reshaped. England still becomes a colonizing nation, but its empire grows later, more deliberately, and without the same mythic origins tied to Elizabethan daring and maritime desperation. Socially, the country becomes wealthier but less dynamic. Stability discourages the rapid social mobility that historically allowed merchants, explorers, and playwrights to rise quickly. Nobility maintains firmer control over land and resources. Innovation slows because there is less pressure and less opportunity to reinvent the nation. And Boleyn's survival brings peace, prosperity, and predictability. But in doing so, it erases the dramatic turning points that carved England's cultural identity. History becomes calmer and far less iconic. The fragility of history lies here. One life saved rewrites everything. One life, one birth, one heartbeat could have changed everything we know about England. And Boleyn's survival reshapes the entire Tudor world. With the birth of a male heir, she becomes untouchable, transforming from a doomed queen into the most powerful woman in England. The Protestant Reformation accelerates under her protection, reshaping the nation's soul decades ahead of schedule. Elizabeth grows up safe, educated, and cherished, but never becomes the legendary queen who forged a golden age. And with a stable succession, Europe faces a calmer, more predictable England whose politics, culture, and empire develop along very different lines. This alternate timeline isn't just a game of what if, it's a reminder of how fragile history truly is. How a single moment, a single survival, can redirect the fate of nations. If you enjoyed exploring this world, like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what alternate Tudor timeline should we explore next?